I'm going to start with something fun here. Wow. This is the international uh, of I guess Laos and Vietnam. So it was a friendship concert that happened last night. I'm assuming in one of those countries. Um, I'm not able to comment on this person's page, but very interesting. I got news for you. I don't think this Marxism thing's going anywhere. Just so people understand. um, but anyway, this is relevant because I was in a chat last night or a spaces last night for a while, and at times it got contentious. At times it was peaceful. At times it was interesting. Um, yeah, the host was very sensitive to people coming in and representing what he says is about 90% of X spaces already. So I found that he didn't have a lot of room for debate or discussion, which to me is unfortunate because if you're looking for an echo chamber, then you're not going to learn a lot. And that doesn't actually help you to understand your own positions very well. There was a gentleman who came in later in the evening who I think his name was Choose Liberty, and I'm offering it now to debate him or talk or whatever, to see what we agree with, disagree with. But I noticed early in the conversation, there was a moment where the host got mad at me because I disagreed with his assessment on the Department of Education, the federal Department of Education. So he was saying, like, he got really mad because I was basically saying that the federal Department of Education, that there is some waste, and that if we don't acknowledge that there's waste and we just allow for the people who are sucking up the goodwill and throwing it in the garbage, if we allow those people to dominate, then what happens is when there's actually waste, then nobody will do anything about it. I'm not saying don't have education. What I was saying was that, my dad went to college. There was no federal Department of Education. And that the federal Department of Education is a money grift because what they do is they are the stewards of of the loan program. They're the ones that are making sure that all these colleges can charge 10 times for college what they charged just a decade earlier, and that puts the students in a very difficult spot. It saddles them with debt, and then unfortunately the schools get off the hook because they get the money up front and then they turn around and then they put it into their coffers, and then those coffers, aka endowments, get invested by hedge funds in the market. So part of what's propping up the stock market are all these universities all over the country with your tax dollars. And that's completely involuntary because even though the students volunteer to go to the schools, the families all across the country that are paying taxes, and everyone is paying taxes, they don't volunteer for that money to end up in a hedge fund. So you can see the dangers of this system, and none of it has to do with better education. And I was trying to make that point, and the host got very angry at me because, to his credit, he did thank me after, and he was very nice after. But he got angry because he thought that I was presenting a MAGA talking point. And that's where people need to, that's where people need to understand that there are going to be topics that are going to make you uncomfortable because it sounds like you're quote unquote opposition. Frankly, left right is garbage. If you're thinking about your left and your right wing, you might ask yourself, are you a chicken? What kind of bird are you? Because there's no left and right wing in the real world. Okay? There's no left and right wing. I know what my name says, and people say, talking Marx and markets? Think about it. We're talking about Marx. We're talking about Marxism. We're talking about socialism. I'm talking about it because I'm developing my own understanding for it. I'm not pretending to be an expert. At the same time, we're talking about markets. What does that represent? It represents economics, it represents history, it represents the real world. That's what I'm about. And I'll critique anything that I need to critique, and I'll praise anything I need to praise. There was a gentleman who came in at the end who was who made a comment, or towards the end made a comment that socialism and capitalism are actually the same thing. The two sides of one coin. Well, uh, yeah. I mean, you know, that's just not the case. I could go through many examples, but as I said in the chat or in the spaces, socialism, the difference between socialism, or he said communism, right? Because he was saying China and the US are the same. The biggest difference is very simple. Which is in command? Is it profit? Is it capital? Or not? So if capital is in command, then you're living capitalism, meaning that if due to the market and due to the way that you structure the interaction with the market, if businesses and very wealthy individuals are able to buy elections or buy politicians or get to curry their favor through donations to their campaigns, and then they therefore turn around and support policies that enable those businesses to make money, or even support the direct extraction of taxpayer dollars back to those businesses to enhance them, and use military to help those companies profit, aka what you're seeing in Venezuela, how the military is literally going. I mean, that's actually fascism, but the military is becoming a mercenary wing of the capitalist class. Well, that's capitalism. The money is in command. Every decision made in Washington D.C. is about profit. It's not about the welfare of you and your family. Now, I'm not saying idealistically that China has, all angels running its country and that they're perfect. Nobody's perfect. There's never been perfect people. There was one, I guess, but he died in, I guess, 30 AD or 33 AD, right? But the point is that the U.S. Or China or communist countries, what's different with them is that their communist party, the ideology, sits on top of the political structure. So in China, the Communist Party rules over the government, and the government rules over the capital class. So there are billionaires, and there are lots of wealthy people, and there are lots of very large businesses, and they sell stuff all over the world, and there are large entities in every sector, but none of them have the ability to influence the government in a way that changes the policies of the government. The government and the political ideology of the Communist Party rules over everything. That's the hierarchy. Now, is it perfect? No. Is there corruption? Sure, there's corruption, and they have to deal with it, and they do deal with it openly. But what makes them different is what direction you're in. Now, they live in a very different system. But to say that these systems are the same and that Marx and, as the guy said, that other guy, Adam Smith, that they're in the same, they work together or something. I mean, that's just not true. Sorry, bro. They're not the same. They're just not. The Adam Smith wasn't even a capitalist, right? Adam Smith was a market analyst. Capitalism is just the way you interact with markets. So no, they're not the same. And here's one way you could understand that they're not the same, okay? And this is for everybody who agrees with that gentleman. They're not the same. You can tell they're not the same because countries like the United States and Britain and France have spent the better part of the last 150 to 200 years fighting wars, murdering, and slaughtering anybody who attempts to align themselves, let alone to actually adopt the system of socialism or communism. So let me repeat that. Countries like the United States, like Britain, like France, they have gone out of their way to align or to attack anyone who attempts to align or to adopt the system of Marxism or socialism. So what happens is, how can you say that they're the same thing if countries will literally kill people for adopting those systems? Now, last night I saw the post about the president deciding to buy $200 billion in mortgage loans. He's ordering Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac to do that, right? And my initial reaction is, wow, this is not capitalism, because you're telling them to do this and you're trying to engineer lower prices. You're not letting the market decide, right? I mean, technically that's him interfering. And of course, this was reposted here. Caroline Levitt, President Trump is saving the American dream. And then this gentleman made a very interesting comment. He said, they think you're stupid. Banks have huge losses on the books from lower rate mortgages they can't sell with mortgage backed securities. Trump just socialized it with $200 billion to Fannie Freddie Mac. So we are all now covering bank bad debts and creating moral hazard. Everything is fine. So what he's saying is that the U.S., by ordering Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac to purchase $200 billion worth of mortgage bonds, what the U.S. is doing is socializing the potential losses for the entities that are holding these lower rate mortgages. And then what's also happening is he is going to press the Federal Reserve either through the conditions of the country or through the conditions at the Fed, because he's definitely trying to put his own guys in there, to lower interest rates. So if you lower interest rates now, then the mortgage backed bonds that are sitting out there will become more attractive because they'll have higher rates than what the rates are that you have now. So you understand, like that's I guess the manipulation at play here. Now again, that's not really, that's still not capitalism. That's actually closer to fascism, because now you're aiding and abetting a specific group of assets and asset holders through the government. That's fascism. Okay? Fascism is not just military uniforms and marching and, heiling, okay, and, chanting Sieg Heil. That's not really fascism. Fascism is using the government to foment uh, specific economic outcomes, because the government is picking and deciding winners and losers. Okay? And they're doing it for the private business sector, not for the state, not for the people. That's the difference. People say, well, it sounds like communism. It's not communism, because communism isn't there to help private business. Whereas fascism absolutely is there to help private business. You think about all the businesses in Germany that were propped up through fascism and that are still around today. Hugo Boss, BMW, Mercedes. Obviously, Volkswagen was created then by Ferdinand Porsche and Hitler himself. Extension of that would be Audi. But then you have other businesses, pharmaceutical companies, etc. I mean, there's a lot, right? Now, same thing with Italy. Italy had the same thing, and this is common. This is what fascism is. That's why fascism is an extension of capitalism. It's not different. It's an extension of it. It's a more violent extension of it, but it's an extension of it. You could argue that the United States kind of blurs the line between using fascism when convenient and using capitalism traditionally. And did Trump go into Venezuela? Is that capitalism at play? Well, it is, but it's the more aggressive cousin of it. It's fascism. Because if he's going in there to take their oil forcibly, he has no legal right to do it. That's fascism. Then he's doing it, and it's going to help the businesses that, yeah, maybe they have to invest their own money. Well, who cares? You don't think that the oil companies would happily invest $100 billion, $200 billion? I mean, honestly, you don't think an oil company like ExxonMobil or whatever, Citgo, you have the Zionist billionaire that's making headlines because he bought Citgo in November, and now he's going to have an asset that's going to be worth like 10 times probably what he bought it for because there's no opposition to him, right? Well, you don't think these companies will foot the bill for whatever repairs or whatever it is that they need to do? $100 billion? No problem. Are you kidding me? That's nothing for them. The upside of the deal is tremendous. Yeah, this was funny. I mean, this is very true, right? I have some good news and some bad news. The bad news is in 1913, the U.S. Federal Reserve federal income tax was signed into law by Woodrow Wilson, along with the creation of the IRS and the Federal Reserve Bank, right? He was a great president, right? Besides being a racist, total jerk. And then the good news is he said not to worry. It's just temporary. Temporary since 1913. So 113 years later, it's just temporary. Yeah. I think this concert also just helps to understand that in countries where you have these growing populations and you have people that are in countries that are developing and that are going to be part of the Asian economic boom, Marxism isn't going away. It's not going anywhere. And Laos, I believe, just got a train built or a train tracks built, I should say, with the help of China that spans the length of the country. So pretty cool. You're going to see a lot of economic development for them because what's going to happen is China is going to slowly do a little bit of what the United States did in the 80s and 90s, especially. They're going to want to export some of their production to countries where they can get some cheaper labor, where they can't automate everything. And having good infrastructure will help with that process. And by this is like you're gonna have Chinese businesses that maybe trade with Laos or maybe want to use Laos, maybe use their land or use their labor, and this will help with that process, and this will help Laos to develop, and the world moves on without bombs, without imperialism. Um, and this was an interesting little reel here.
If you have $100 bill and you spend it at the local takeaway, and that person spends it on groceries, and then that person spends it on new shoes, the $100 bill is still $100. But if you pay with card, the bank takes 1.5%, then another 1.5%, and then another 1.5%. After 20 or 30 transactions, the only ones left with the full $100 are the banks. That's why they want to get rid of cash. If you have a $100 bill and you...
So just think about that for a second, right? So you have $100 and you keep using it. The bank and the government has created uh has well, let me just say it again.
Spend it at the local takeaway, and that person spends it on groceries, and then that person spends it on new shoes. The $100 bill is still $100, but if you pay with card, the bank takes 1.5%, then another 1.5%.
So when you pay with a card, you're getting all these fees, right? Because cards, have you ever been in a store? And I'm sure you've experienced this, where you've been in a store, and this used to happen more, years ago. I don't know if this still happens as much now, but you go into a store, right? And you have an item. Maybe you just wanted like chewing gum or something small, and you pull out your card, and the guy says, "No, no, 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 no. You have to buy at least this amount if you're going to use a card." I'm sure some of you have experienced that. Well, that right there is part of what this guy's talking about. So the reason that the business needs you to pull out your card to purchase goods and services at a certain level, like if you're just buying $2 worth of goods, if you're buying a chewing gum or whatever, like a beef jerky, and you're buying like one little thing, if you try to pay with a card, either he's going to have to charge you a lot of fees or he can't take your card. You have to use cash at that level, or you have to buy more stuff. because he has to pay a fee. He's getting a fee charged for even allowing credit cards. So it's when a store uses credit cards, it's not like free, right? It's a convenience charge. So they have to actually have a certain amount of money come across the table in order to make it worth it for them to sell goods where you're going to use a credit card. The other part of it is that the cards themselves are, and the banks who back these cards, they have to charge a fee. If you use cash, well, cash is just hard currency. It's a representation of a note of a reserve somewhere in some bank, and just the representation of that money is what allows people to trade it. So it's like the money itself isn't worth anything, but what it represents is worth something. So we use it. Now, nobody calls for that actual asset. Nobody goes to the bank and says, you know what? I don't want my money. I want my gold. Nobody does that. And Nixon suspended temporarily in 1971 the convertibility of US dollars to gold. It's 2026, so we've never gone back. Do you know why that was so important? Because of what this guy is saying. Think about it. Right now, with the economy the way it is, with the world the way it is, you don't think people would be taking their money and saying, you know what? I actually want half my paycheck in gold and I want to hoard it somewhere because the dollar has been depreciating so rapidly over the past 100 years, let alone the past 50 years, that it doesn't make sense. It's been 55 years now since Nixon suspended the convertibility of dollars to gold. So what you want to do is, in this situation, you would want gold because the value of that gold is going to be steady, if not rising against the dollar. The dollar is going to go down. So that little change provided a cover for the banks and a cover for the dollar. And now they don't even want you using physical dollars because they want to be able to extract the extra fees and taxes out of every transaction that you make. Because taxes are not just what you pay at the end of the year or at the in springtime or whatever. This is also happening every time you move, every time you gas your car up, every time you buy groceries. So there's a control aspect to using cards, there's electronic surveillance aspect to using cards, but there's also the financial aspect. And this is all part of being in the latter stages of capitalism. They have to extract every penny and be penny wise, dollar foolish in every single decision made, including the way that you buy things. It's not good enough for you to go to the store and spend $300. You have to spend $300 the way they need you to spend it. You have to spend it on your card. You can't use cash. Using cash means they miss out on fees. And don't forget, the banks that back the cards are part of the banking system that owns the Fed. So it's in their interest when they make interest and fees on your transactions. These are the people that already own the currency. They already own the dollars, folks. They own the dollars that are depreciating. So they are tripling up on you, bro. They are tripling up. This is what my channel talks about. With all due respect, this is what I talk about and what my channel talks about. That so many other people out here who are going on and on about philosophy and their isms that they can't put together. This is why they hate communism and socialism. It's not because they don't like Marx and he didn't like his haircut, okay? It's simply because it's not because of social issues. Because as you've seen, there are Western countries that will make healthcare and education cheap, if not free. So that's not what it is. It comes down to the money. Money, 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 money. Guap, cash, coin. That's what it comes down to. Socialism and Marxism are systems that freeze and slow the ability of the financial system to extract the most amount of money out of you. Because in their systems, the government owns the currency. So that means the public owns the currency. So if that's the case, they put limits on the amount of usury on these cards, but also when there's fees, those fees are going into the coffers of the government, which they use to spend on the people. They spend it on the system, on the state, which helps, which is why you get these beautiful airports, beautiful trains. You get land that's well maintained. When the government owns stuff here, it looks like garbage. When the government owns stuff in other countries, it looks beautiful. Why is that? Because the power here is in the private sector. The power there is public. That's the difference. The public doesn't allow the private to dominate them. That's why they hate socialism. That's why they hate communism. That's why, as this gentleman is explaining, we got to go cashless because those fees are getting kicked back to entities that also already own the dollars in circulation. You're not getting this analysis from the political grifters. You're not getting this analysis from all the fools out there who are on X who are talking about all their isms. You're not getting this analysis from people who are marching around with their flags and screaming and yelling and fighting and arguing. You're not getting this. I understand this stuff because I've lived in it. I've worked in the financial sector. I understand how this works and I have an interest in it. I'm not the expert. I don't pretend to be an expert, but nobody can refute what I just said because it's all true. But people don't understand it. That's the connection. Socialism is not hated. Communism is not hated. Marxism is not hated because of the social aspect. That's a small part of it. That's for politics. The reality is the people that own our society, they don't like it because it restricts their ability to extract the most amount of money from you. That's the difference. That's the difference. Yeah, look at this. Fascist 12,000 or I mean that's ridiculous, dude. The UK is 12,000 arrests. Think about it. China has they say 1,500 arrests, less than 1,500 arrests for online comments in a country that has 1.4 billion people. The United Kingdom has like 50 million people, and they have over 12,000. 12 times as many people have been arrested for social media comments in the United Kingdom than that of China. Think about that. China has a population that's what, 20 times? It's more than 10 times. I mean, what is it? So 50 billion 50 million 500 million would be 10 times. So billion, yeah, that's 20. So yeah, it's more than 20 times. I mean, come on. Uh I mean, I don't think the European Union is going to last much longer. I don't think it's going to last much longer. Let's see. Why are we paying taxes? Taxes should be canceled for the future. So with all the fraud, yeah. I mean, look, this is the danger that I see from all the Republicans are doing. You know what they need to do to win the midterms, right? They're starting to expose fraud that they think they can tie to the Democrats. The reality is both parties are committing fraud. You know, there's lots of it, but I find it interesting that if you push this so much, then the American people are going to say, well, why do we pay taxes? We know what's going to happen. Now, President Trump, and this is one of the interesting comments I heard the other day about like, well, you're creating the disillusion of congressional power and really expanding the executive power and creating sort of a dictatorial state in the future for the United States, right? And I was thinking about it. If you make people believe that all the money that they pay in the system is just wasted, and we're seeing it in New Jersey with Montclair. There was $20 million stolen, and the state basically said, if you don't raise property tax, we'll come in and run the school. They refused to just give the money and help support the schools. That's crazy. And you're seeing this kind of like the fraud with all these fake daycares and fake businesses. And it's not just Somalians, it's all kinds of groups, it's all kinds of fraud. I mean, the Department of Defense, the State Department, the Pentagon, they haven't passed an audit in years, and they lost like $20 trillion. No one's even talking about that. So for the American people, they're looking at it saying our taxes don't cover the budget anyway because we have $1 trillion in interest that's due, and we don't pay that much in taxes, right? So you're borrowing the money. We don't want to pay any taxes. And then Trump has said a bunch of times, the governor of Florida said he's pushing for eliminating property tax, which, hey, that makes sense. Shouldn't have property tax. But Trump even said he's thinking about getting rid of income tax. And the knee jerk reaction is to celebrate, like, good, less taxes. They're all going to fraud, right? But then there's another part of this that's actually a little scarier. If the government is admitting that, yeah, you know what, we don't need your tax dollars, well, what does that mean? That means that they only need you for collateral to borrow money, and they don't care about your tax revenue. And they're going to go out and do all the demonic and stupid things that they've been doing. And they can do it without your tax dollars. Meaning the power of the people is lessened even more, because the old argument that the taxpayer has, taxation without representation, right? The British, like, you can't force us to do what you want, and you don't even give us a vote, right? Well, if the taxpayers are not being taxed, do you need representation? This is the sick logic that comes out of DC. I can guarantee you there are people in think tanks saying, you know what? We borrow a lot of money, we get a lot of money from tariffs. Let's just stop taxing them so much. They can pay like consumption tax, but forget about income tax, forget about property tax. Forget about it. Let's just cut the taxes, then we can do what we want. You see where I'm getting? If they eliminate taxes, or eliminate at least income and property, and then Trump said he wants to eliminate capital gains tax on property. So when you sell your house, they want to get rid of the capital gains too. Well, wait a second. If you're going to eliminate capital gains on that, lower capital gains, lower the corporate tax, get rid of the income tax, get rid of property tax, what does that mean? That sounds like you're eliminating the purpose of representation. And you're opening the door for that executive power. Now, Trump on his own can't do all these things. And Congress is pretty pathetic. And they're going to probably not do anything before the midterms. And then the midterms, the Democrats are going to take over the House anyway. So even if they don't pass things through the Senate, the House isn't going to do anything to help the president do anything, because they don't help people. They just fight in politics. So I don't know if that'll actually happen, but it sounds like you're building the case for expanded executive power and lessening the taxation representation relationship, which means you could do more nonsense. So yeah, that's definitely a concern. Streets in North Korea, I mean, there's less car traffic, but you get the point, right? U.S. has the most amount of child kidnappings. Yeah, this is an interesting from Ron Paul.
Hamas was encouraged and really started by Israel because they wanted Hamas to counteract Yasser Arafat.
Arafat himself told an Italian newspaper, quote, Hamas is a creature of Israel. He even claimed that former Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin admitted as much to him, calling it a fatal error. Now, you might be wondering, why should I believe mad Ron Paul or the famously shady Yasser Arafat? Well, you don't have to. You can believe top Israeli and US officials who've basically owned up to all this. Brigadier Yitzhak Segev, for example, who is the Israeli military governor in Gaza, and later told a New York Times reporter that he helped finance the Islamic movement. The Israeli government gave me a budget to the Islamic movement. Told a New York Times reporter that he helped finance the Islamic movement. The Israeli government gave me a budget, he said, and the military government gives to the mosques. Colonel David Hakam, who worked in Gaza in the late 1980s as an Arab affairs expert in the Israeli military, has admitted that the original sin was Israeli support for Yassin in the late 70s. But at the time, he has argued, nobody thought about the possible results. Well, Avner Cohen did. Cohen was the Israeli official who was responsible for religious affairs in Gaza for more than 2 decades, and who now says, quote, Hamas, to my great regret, is Israel's creation. Yeah, Cohen's words. He actually wrote an official report to his superiors in the mid-1980s, warning them not to play divide and rule in the occupied territories and calling on Israel to, quote, break up this monster before this reality jumps in our face.
Wow. Not something most Americans are hearing, and probably not something they want to hear. Now, you also have to remember, if the Israeli government gave a budget to these gentlemen to help fund and create this wing of resistance against the Arafat government in Palestine, then that money originally came from the United States because the U.S. funds Israel. So that means that the U.S. helped to create Hamas along with Israel. And that means that, again, your tax dollars have funneled its way to creating an entity that was used to disrupt and create chaos against the regime in Palestine. And then, of course, now is the scapegoat to fight a war against all the people in Palestine when the terrorists themselves are using the human beings as shields against the IDF. An absolute abduct train wreck. There's no way to get around it. I think it's a lesson that, Israel's not alone in this. Every country has done something like this. It's a lesson to learn. When you fund rebel groups and when you fund opposition groups and they get violent and you want them to be violent, there's always a chance that either through fanatical religion or through philosophy or simply because they're lying to you, that they will turn on you or start doing things that you don't necessarily want them to do. Oftentimes, meddling creates more chaos for you. That's why having a humble foreign policy makes a lot of sense. Humble. And when you get involved and you start funding operatives and all this other garbage, you get the nonsense that you just saw there. Okay, yeah, I will show this because this is hilarious. He keeps falling asleep, and this lady just pulls him in, right? Nice move, bro. Got to give this guy an assist, right? Because he's very believable, right? Oh, get off of me, man! You're drooling on me, man. Man, stop. Now, this only works if the lady is nice, right? Now, obviously, this is a setup. If you look at the plane, there's nobody on the plane, so obviously it's a setup. But it's a great little skit and a move that I'm sure people will try. Here's another I mean, this is just nice. People just, this guy just giving them pool noodles. I love pool noodles, and just being silly, man. Why not? Just be silly, have fun. You can't underestimate how different the energy and the vibe is in your life and in other people's lives when you just giggle and be silly. Being immature is actually can be a very awesome thing, right? It's fun. Now we'll get to something not so fun. So, 2 Israeli tourists, reportedly IDF soldiers, started a fire to burn down a protected forest in Argentina. Yeah. Uh I thought I had the I thought I had the reaction to it. Now I can't find it. All right, I'll look for it in a second. Global markets are in big trouble. So this is the most significant monetary pivot of the 21st century. For the first time since 1996, central banks now hold more gold than U.S. treasuries. The game has changed forever. Here's what caused it. Now, So here's the chart. Okay, gold surpassing U.S. Treasuries, right? And for those who can't see it, so for the first time, this is just saying the same thing. Here's U.S. Treasury holdings as a percentage of international reserves and gold holdings as a percentage of international reserves. Now, look at the dates here. Okay, 1970. There's U.S. Treasuries and there's gold, right? And then look at 75, 80. There's a huge dip. And then look at the surge here. This is in the 1990s. Treasury surpassing global. Now you see this huge drop off here. Remember, convertibility to gold. Convertibility to gold. U.S. Treasuries start expanding. Tremendous amount of debt created after there's no convertibility, printing lots of money. Lots of countries taking on this debt. Japan, China, France, Russia, the Federal Reserve itself, right? Quantitative easing. Look at this explosion. Look at treasuries. There's a dip here, financial crisis. And then now look at gold surpassing treasuries for the first time. Is that going to continue? Well, let's read what the gentleman what he wrote. So he said, "This is the." Oh, I'm sorry, I read that part. Uh, Here's what caused it. The exorbitant privilege of the U.S. dollar is being actively rejected by the rest of the world. Foreign nations are no longer optimizing for a return on capital. They are panicking for return of capital. The U.S. Treasuries equal political liability. They can be sanctioned, seized, or debased by the Fed. Gold equals neutral reserve asset. It has zero counterparty risk. It is nobody's liability. The math is undeniable, and foreign nations can see it. The U.S. debt is rising by $1 trillion every 100 days. Interest on that debt is now over $1 trillion per year, more than the entire defense budget. Foreigners know the only way the U.S. pays this back is by printing the difference. They are front running the fall of the US dollar. Like it or not, the world is moving to a multipolar settlement system. It's a good way of saying it. It's not just political power, it's economics, right? Don't think this is just anti Western nations like China or Russia. Look at the data. Singapore, Poland, and India are aggressively buying gold and silver. Huge why the Chinese stopped helping to add to the silver market. Nobody wants to be left holding the paper bag. The U.S. bond market just lost its sticky buyer of last resort. If central banks won't buy our debt, who will? We are watching the end of the fiat standard in real time. As foreign demand for treasuries evaporates, uh, yields must rise to attract buyers. Think about that, right? So people don't want to buy treasuries, right? They're nervous. So they don't want to buy treasuries. So you have to raise rates in order to get people to be attracted to want to buy these things. We talked about this a little earlier in different context. But higher yields crash the housing market, blow up banks, and crush equities. Now, why does it crash the housing market? Well, if you have higher yields coming out, that means it's a lot harder for people to get loans because it's more expensive. Okay? I do this for a living, but okay, and it's just him talking. So, excellent, excellent points. Good logic. Okay? Something to look out for. Yeah, it could be preparation for World War III. Let's look at a couple other comments. I'm just curious. People say, this isn't trend anymore. It's a regime shift. Central banks are no longer chasing yield; they're chasing survival. Treasuries equal political risk. Gold equal neutral insurance. And when foreign demand disappears, bonds must be sold with higher yields. Higher yields mean paying for housing, banks, and equities. This isn't conspiracy. And auto loans, too. Don't forget about that. Don't forget about that. The auto market, I know it's not as important, but think about it. You have this push across the US and in Western Europe for people to drive less, right? Well, one way to make sure people drive less is they can't afford a car. And what's happening in the auto sector? The Chinese have become a dominant player in the auto sector, but they're being blocked from certain markets, right? Well, look at this higher yields. So a $12,000 car right now, even if it was transferred with all the fees or whatever, you sell that thing in America, it would sell like hotcakes. They can't risk that coming over here. Those who aren't, but no one's prepared. No one's prepared. You can't prepare. No one has the money to prepare. They've already been monetary inflation, cost of living's already killed everybody. So you should be aware of it, but what are you going to do if you don't have any money? It's hard to do it. This was a very interesting post from the other day, and I think it's fair. After the fall of the Soviet Union, many Russians had the illusion that they would be welcomed with open arms in the West now that they were officially capitalist. They were shocked when that didn't happen. They didn't hate you because you had a communist economy. They hated you because you defeated Hitler, and the West will never forget it. Yeah, and they hate you not just because of that, but they also hate you because your system did not allow, I should say, for people to be able to use the financial system to rape and pillage everyone. And because you existed for 80 years, it exposed Marxism to the world. And had you failed, if the Russian Revolution had failed, like the German Revolution failed, then Marxism might have faded away 50, 60 years ago. You know, who knows if China would have adopted Marxism without the Russian Revolution? But, to be honest, and I think this guy's going to say what I'm thinking. So, Western Europe has always used Eastern Europeans as slaves, hence the word slave derived from Slav, as they were trafficked prior to African slave trade. The West will never forgive the Soviets for liberating Eastern Europe from its. Yeah, it's very true. Um, Very interesting to see people well aware of this. They hated you not because you defeated Hitler, because you didn't allow them to extract resources and profits from your nation and people. Exactly what the why they sent Hitler after you. Yeah, Hitler was sent. I mean, this is never talked about. Hitler and Mussolini were not. They were helped. They were created and pushed by the West to go get the Soviets. They wanted to knock out the communists. Okay, that's what their original purpose was. And yeah, they'll never be forgiven for that. Slavs will never be treated with the same respect as the Western Aryans. Never. They'll always be seen as the former slaves, and they'll always be denigrated. And that's why the pivot of the Slavs towards the East makes more sense, because those people, at least they'll treat you with dignity. I think that pretty much covers everything currently. Yeah, okay. So it's the dollar stupid. Who's Saddam Hussein announces selling oil in euros and not in Iraq dollars. Oh, I'm sorry, not in dollars. Iraq is invaded 2003. 2009, Gaddafi proposes creating the African dinar for all sales. Libya invaded 2011. Maduro uses the yuan in oil exports. Venezuela is attacked 2026. Yep, sounds about right. Let's see. Is there anything current that I need to comment on here before I wrap this up? It's always good for humanity when the most advanced systems are in the hands of civilization. Okay. All right. Cool. What is this? This is how the new section of the new Line 13 of the Shenzhen Metro, one of the largest in the world, was opened. The Chinese flock to the inauguration of the new infrastructure for the people. Yeah, they're excited. That's cool. Now, let's see. it will be proved that the U.S. reactionaries, like all the reactionaries in history, do not have much strength. In the U.S., there are others who are really strong, the American people. Yeah, I mean, from all accounts, and look, people can lie. But if you listen to interviews, and you can actually listen to interviews and read the scripts of interviews from Western people with um, Stalin, and there's a lot of interesting interviews out there that were done with Lenin and Stalin and Mao. None of these people hated American people. Like, I mean, they had enemies. American people were not their enemy. They didn't see the average person as the enemy. They really didn't. I mean, I'm not saying this to prop them up. They're not here. They don't know me. They're long gone. I'm saying this because it's true. They don't hate American people. So American people who are taught and psyop to hating them, you really need to do some digging. I was amazed by the commentary by even Marx. He liked America. He liked American people. Even though America wasn't communist, he didn't care about that. He liked the people. He liked the revolutionary spirit. Mao Zedong, think about who Mao is. Mao is a man who spent most of his life, okay? He lost his son, he lost his wife, and he lost his sister, all killed, just fighting for just enough freedom for his peninsula to be able to carry out a government that they chose, right? Because Mao didn't tell everybody you must be Marxist, you must be communist. He didn't tell the people that. The people supported him. Okay, and you could say the color revolution and all that. It was rough and all. I'm not denying that. I'm not denying that. But in 1946, this comment makes a lot of sense because he didn't have hatred for American people. I mean, hell, they didn't singularly win the war, but the American people fought against the Japanese, and the Japanese were slaughtering his people, and he had to fight tooth and nail to get after the Japanese, and then the KMT also. So let's see. China can buy all the oil they want from us. The de-dollarization thesis just died. Trump to oil executives Friday. Russia and China can purchase Venezuelan crude, but they purchase it through American firms in American dollars under American terms. 300 billion barrels, the largest proven reserves on Earth, maybe, controlled by the United States. For a decade, the entire BRICS architecture was built on one premise: escape dollar dependency through alternative energy trade. Russia sells discounted crude to China in yuan. The shadow fleet enables sanctions evasion. Non USD settlements grow quarter over quarter. The architecture assumed adversaries could access non Western supply. Trump just eliminated the non Western supply. China bought 80% of Venezuelan exports before the blockade. Beijing's teapot refiners dependent on discounted Mare crude delivered by shadow fleet tankers running dark across the Atlantic. Those tankers are being seized. Those flows are being rerouted. And crude that remains will now be sold by Chevron and Exxon dollars. This is not an oil policy. This is monetary warfare disguised as energy security. Every barrel of China purchases from the U.S. controlled Venezuela strengthens the dollar. Every settlement funds American. Da 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 da. Yep. Okay. We are open for business. Yeah. I mean, look. A couple things here. Number one, China and Putin, both Xi and Putin, they probably talked to President Trump about this, and he probably told them what was going to happen. I no doubt that there's open communication. Doesn't mean they agreed, but I'm sure there was open communication. That's the first thing. The second thing is if you if this is the policy needed to secure the dollar, then we're all in a lot of trouble because the dollar isn't going to be strong for the people because Chevron and Exxon control oil. Okay? You're not getting anything out of that. You could say, well, you could buy the stock. I mean, go ahead, buy the stock. The people that can buy the significant shares of the stock, they already have it. Okay, you're not an institutional buyer. You're not a billionaire, so you're not going to benefit from this as an American. You also are only reinforcing the idea that either China and Russia have to become more militaristic with their advancement over, oil reserves, or that they need to step away from oil and invest in alternative energy. China is way ahead on that. They're already doing that, and this is proving why they need to do it. The other part is that China and Russia, their currencies are much more stable than the dollars. China purposely devalues so that it can trade with the rest of the world, but it's a stable currency that doesn't hurt its own people as much as you'd think. Even though it's a sixth of the dollar, people in China can afford stuff. So I think this move is penny wise, dollar foolish, but I understand the premise. I don't agree with the action. I understand the premise. Okay? Emotionally, I don't like it. I don't think killing people is good. I don't like forcing other countries to do things. And the real question should be, if Maduro wanted to give licenses to Chevron and Exxon and Citgo and all these other companies, whatever, to extract oil and sell oil, why was that not good enough? Well, probably because, as Marco Rubio and Trump and these people have been saying, well, we want to help the Venezuelan people. No, if Maduro was willing to give licenses and the American companies put an embargo against Venezuela and they wanted to hurt Venezuela, what's the reason? Because they didn't want to have to do business with Venezuela. They just want to control it. Okay? Yeah, they want to protect the dollar. The dollar must be in crisis mode if you need to go out in the final stages of capitalism. We see this. You just need to destroy everything in order to extract every penny out of this currency. And you're seeing this with domestic fraud. I mean, you think the Somalian fraud and the fraud in the government and all that, I mean, you think this is like the biggest part of it? The biggest fraud is the existence of our dollar and the way it moves in itself. And Trump may be trying to keep the dollar afloat, which I don't think is the wrong concept, but the actions are saying desperation. And it's a very dangerous thing. And I don't know if there are any adults in the room with him that are saying to him, Mr. President, let's not bomb anybody. We are only accelerating our own demise. I don't know if anybody's saying that. I have a feeling they're not. Yeah, this was one of the worst things. I heard this earlier. My wife was actually talking about it. This is kind of scary. So the New Jersey Dems, I mean, they basically, they control the state, and they saying in the dead of the night, with less than 1 hour notice, no public input, right before Murphy exited, you had $26 million to Tammy Murphy's FIFA World Cup promo committee. That's his wife. $25 million for a new state supercomputer. So this is absolutely fraud, and this has got to be investigated. You can't have the governor giving money to his own wife's organization for something. 12 million to Bergen County Hospital projects, $9 million to Union County capital projects, like what we don't know. $13 million regional jail reentry center in Camden, $10 million Hudson Coast School. Okay, they're not even covering one of the worst things. My wife told me about this. They're giving like $20 million for projects that have not been requested yet. So they sent money to one of the counties. I think it's either it might be Passaic County, that they're giving money to them so that they can have money in the case of somebody proposing a project. So it's literally money nobody asked for. Now you don't think that money's getting funneled to somebody's wallet? I mean, this is New Jersey, folks. This is New Jersey. Look at the face. Everybody here is walking away with something. I can guarantee that. Check all their bank accounts, folks. If communism is evil, why did Stalin save the world from fascism? Good question. Good question. Oh boy. Yeah, since we paid for the fraud, we pay, yeah. So, yep. That's what people are going to say. That's what people are going to think. So let's end it. Let's end it how we started. There is hope. There are countries out there that are singing and saying the right things, and hopefully, this international inspires you to realize that there are systems out there that aren't, vampires, and that saying and doing some of the right things. So let's listen as we fade away, and then I'll say goodbye for the day. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Always a pleasure. And we'll talk again soon. Bye.